Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome everybody here to our webinar today. Our whole purpose here is to help us all prepare for school when it starts up again, whether that be the late spring or in the fall. As a person who spends my time concerned about school safety and security, I'm thrilled to see so many of you on here taking this time to help all of us prepare for what may come down the road when we get back together. So our program here is don't let the COVID-19 shutdown lead to an increase in school violence. We're trying to figure out what we can do, what we can look for going forward. We have some information here from myself and the other presenters, as well as some information from some school psychologists that I've been consulting with about this to try and bring you the best possible program available to you. So we're going to get started. And here's our today's presenters. I'm Lieutenant Joe Pangaro. I'm a 27-year veteran police officer. I retired as the rank of lieutenant. I was the chief training officer. I'm trained by Homeland Security in threat assessments, student threat assessments, and other facilities assessments. I'm a published author. I've won a lot of awards for some columns I've written on special needs kids and school safety. And I spent time as the director of school safety and security at a large district in New Jersey.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Jonathan Antar. I'm from IP Video Corporation. I'm Director of Channel Support here. I'm technologist by trade. Spent most of my life just exploring technology, and my passion for security and safety, specifically in school districts and in our commercial buildings, has really gotten me to the place that I am now. I've worked a lot with Lieutenant Joseph Pangaro over the years. He has provided me so much information, and you guys are in for a treat today because he really is an expert in the field and his experience is tremendous. He taught me the art of doing the risk assessment. So you guys are in luck today. I'll turn it over to Joe and let him take it from here. Thank you.
So everybody out there, let's start by defining what it is we want to talk about. There's a lot of information we're going to present to you here to help you, give you some ideas of what we need to take a break and relook at our safety and security in our schools. It's a great moment we have to do that in this downtime. But the downtime is part of what the problem is, and that's where this program really developed from when I started thinking about it. Will the trauma and isolation of the COVID-19 crisis lead to more violence in our schools when all of these children return to class, including my own son, who's still in high school? We know that this shutdown and this lockdown has added a lot of stress to many of our lives. Adults, staff members, students, everyone has been stressed by this unprecedented situation we're all dealing with. Violence can sometimes be a result when people are that stressed, when they have so much trauma going on in their lives. And that was really my concern, spending so much time dealing with school safety and security. This was a natural question that I felt we needed to all talk about when we come out of this crisis and we go forward. Can we anticipate and try to protect any of our students and staff as we go forward? We want to understand, who should we consider? What students should we be worried about? Which ones are there? So we already know that there are a lot of students that are on our radar, so to speak, that we are worried about, that may have given some indications they could be a problem. My other concern, and the hidden concern here with the COVID return, is that what if there are kids out there who are so affected by this crisis that when they come back, they will maybe potentially be more available to violence because of the stress that comes out? And how do we identify them? How do we work with them? How do we protect our students and staff from any incidents? And how do we help these kids as we go forward? One of the things I did is I've reached out to a lot of psychologists, school psychologists, people I've worked with and other professionals, to try and get their perspective on what they see and what we can do. And I have some of that feedback in this program here built in. But I can tell you, the psychologists are concerned about the potential that there could be violence because of the stressors involved with it. And that's really the premise of this whole program. So we're going to go forward from here with the next slide. Now, before I begin this, I just want to read something real quick to you. One doctor I'm working with is Dr. Megan Longo. She's a brilliant woman who has been in the schools for years and years. And I asked her this basic question to start this out. Will the anxiety of the COVID-19 shutdown cause students and staff to be more agitated, on edge, and potentially violent when they return to class and work, and why? And her answer, there is no one absolute profile of a student or staff member who has the potential to be violent, but there are known risk factors. Right now, the world is in a state of constant unknowns. Our daily lives and routines are incredibly impacted and disrupted. The uncertainty of the future can lead to increased feelings of fear. Our lack of control over the situation can lead to feelings of helplessness, and being forced to be physically apart can increase our sense of isolation. As the length of this goes on indefinitely, it can have a negative impact on both staff members and students' mental health. Now, that was a question that I wanted to hear from a professional because that was my concern. Can this do that? And the potential is absolutely yes, it can. So some of the things we're looking at, that isolation is an important one. So as we go through these, you'll hear how some of them connect together and some of them are some new thoughts. We know that there is no pattern, there's no profile of a school shooter or an adult shooter in a workplace. The reality, though, is they do share some traits. And one of those number one traits is isolation, a feeling of isolation, disconnection from their school. You know, we're out there and, you know, go Tigers, go Lions, whatever our team mascot is, and these kids just do not feel connected to that school. That is one of the traits that we need to look for. But as we go through it, we're going to look for what's the negative media doing. Listen to this media every single day. They're telling us we're going to die every minute, that there's nothing we can do. No one can protect us from this. It's getting worse and worse and worse. That feeds down to the kids. They hear that, which leads to some of the feelings of mistrust, because as the doctors will tell you, the psychologists will tell you, that when a young person's world is uncertain, when their parents can't protect them, their school can't protect them, the police can't protect them, and the medical community can't protect them for something like this, that creates a lot of that negative feeling, that mistrust, which puts people on edge, adds to the stress. Our tolerance level can certainly go down when we have this kind of a problem. When we come back to school and we're stressed out that much, the slightest thing could set anyone off. And then there's also the family stress to be concerned about. What about our kids that have very difficult home lives, maybe abusive home lives, and now they've been stuck in those houses for months, literally months in those houses with people who may not be very good for them? And then what about kids who had problems at school and have had a 2-month respite now from school? Now they're getting ready to go back. That stress is going to amp up on them. So we want to figure out, what kids do we look at? It's hard to tell exactly. We know there's high-risk kids. It's the unidentified ones I think we need to concentrate on a little bit. Will this stress of the situation cause a rise in latent violence or latent tendencies to violence that maybe would have been there, not been there before? And can we identify those kids? So that's really where we're going here. So we can go to the next slide. We're going to start moving through our material. This program is not to scare anyone. That is not the point of this. You know, we've all been down this road now with school shootings and violence in school. So this program is not to scare anybody. It's to offer insight and to ask some questions that I'm hoping, based on what I do for school safety and security, you can go back to your team and say, hey, are we talking about this? I'm sure many of you are already talking about some of these things. But if you're not, these are the kind of questions hopefully we can offer to you to start thinking about your school, your profile, your security, your equipment, so that we can get ready for the return. That's really the whole idea. So what signs can we look for? Well, we already said there's no specific profile of a school or workplace shooter, but we know that there are traits. There are certain traits that are very common. Isolation, like I said, is one of them, and we'll go through some others as we move. There are observable signs that you can see when people are moving towards violence. Kids don't wake up on a Tuesday morning and decide they're going to shoot 10 of their classmates. That is a building process, and we can see those signs if we know what to look for. And then there's those other influences, things going on at home, things going on to them personally. You know, we know that mental health is a huge problem. Diagnosed and undiagnosed problems are a trait of many of these shooters, adult and juveniles. So we're going to look at those things. So how can these situations affect those students and staff members? That's really what this is all about here, to bring us that way. So we'll go to the next slide. So let's understand a secure facility. What makes it secure? So the basics of a secure location involve understanding internal threats and external threats and how to plan for each one. The internal threats come from the people we allow in our buildings. These are our students, staff, the visitors we allow in, vendors we allow in. These are the people that it's okay for them to be in our buildings. And then we look at the external threats. These are the people that don't have permission to be in our buildings. These are people that show up unannounced. These are people that come to do harm to your school. And the difference between the two is that most school shootings, most school violence comes from the internal threat, people already in the building. So we need to know how to look at each one of these differently and prepare for them differently. Trying to figure this out, I tried to build it up into a way that I could explain it, and I came up with the 3 pillars of security: preparation, communication, and notification. We'll go to the next slide and we'll cover each one of them quickly. If you look at these 3 areas of your school safety and security plan, and you figure out what's underneath each one of these silos here, and you deal with it, you're going to go a long way to helping your security be enhanced. So preparation, that means getting an assessment. Get your school or your district assessed by someone who knows what they're looking for to find the gaps in your security. Then have somebody look at your technology. You might have great technology. Is it up to date? Does it need to be replaced? How about your classroom lockdown ability? We all know that in an active shooter incident, time equals life. The faster you can lock that classroom door down and block the view into that room, the better chances those people in that room have to survive. And what kind of training do you give your staff? Do you train them to do the right things? So the next thing we look at is communication. If something happens, you have stakeholders in your building, the students, the staff, everybody else. How do they call for help? How do they tell you? How does a teacher on the 2nd floor looking out the window see a kid approaching the school with a rifle and let everybody else in the building know we have to lock down, something's happening, this is bad? So how do you do it? What is your method and what is your plan for doing that? Is everyone allowed to call for that help? Is everyone allowed to put your building in lockdown? You got to consider these things. And finally, notification. Once you realize you need to be in lockdown, how do you call the outside world for help? Who are you going to call? How are you going to call them? What are you going to say? When do you call? And why are you doing it in the method you have? So what method do you have to reach the outside world? If we think we're going to do it on a landline, who's allowed to make that call? Does every classroom have the ability to dial out? If you're going to use cell phones, do you have service everywhere? So these are the kind of things that an assessment also picks up for you, gives you some guidelines. Next slide, please. All right, so when we look at the signs of potential violence, what is it we're looking for? Well, we know that our students have broad range of different talents and skills, but we also know that kids that are planning and plotting violence, like I said, they don't wake up on Tuesday and decide to kill people in their school. Same thing in a business. People don't decide, hey, I don't like the people I work with, I'm going to kill them. It's a building process. And the way we get clues to what's going on with people is understanding the signs. So what this is called, this whole area is called leakage. So people who are planning to do violence or in the mindset to do violence, they leak out some of that information to get some feedback from the world around them. So you might see that in drawings that kids make, in the things that they write, in the journals that they write, the cartoons they draw, on their social media posts, right? A lot of times kids will put something out there to get a reaction, to see how it's going over. You know, I might go to the school Thursday and shoot the place up and see who picks up on that, see who says things about it, right? You might have actual threats where a kid says, I'll come back to school Wednesday and I'll kill everybody with my rifle. These are specific types of threats that you would get. Suicidal ideation. We know that, especially in this time of COVID-19, the rate of suicide is increasing because of the stress that people are feeling. There was just a doctor in New York who killed herself, and because of the stress of working in the hospital. So our kids are feeling this also. Teen suicide is up more than it's ever been. So we got to understand suicidal ideation and how that plays in here. The clothing that people wear before they go on these attacks is actually an indicator. And that seems really strange, but we're going to see some pictures of how you can try and put that together, that clue that they're giving you that something is going on, that they're preparing for something, could be an alert that you need to take some kind of action. Doesn't mean they're going to be a shooter, but it means something's going on with them. So we'll cover all of these as we go. Next slide, please. All right, so here's some real examples. These are three different drawings, doodlings, journalings that I've taken from kids in the course of my investigations. The one on the left is probably the scariest thing I've ever seen. You see right there, it's the first top words there was kill list, and then a word below that says how. So that student was making a kill list. A kill list is a very common thing that kids who are under stress and that are wanting to act out often create. They create kill lists. Not everyone, law enforcement or schools, know how to deal with that. So you have to investigate a kill list very, very seriously. This particular picture presented so much information, probably, like I said, the scariest thing I've ever seen. So I looked at it and I noticed one thing. The word list was crossed out. and it was changed to kill plan by a gun. That answers that how question the young man wrote. He was I believe he was a freshman in high school. So we called the young man down to the office, and I interviewed him. You have to have interview skills to be able to pull information out of people properly. So I said to him, "Did you do all this?" "Yes, I did." And now this took a little bit to get to. This wasn't instantaneous. He just started telling me. We had a conversation, but using the proper skills, I built a rapport with him. He started telling me things. So the 4 people you see in a cage right there, he was in about a 5 or 6 month long science project with a group of other kids, and he felt very isolated from those kids, and they weren't friendly with him. He wasn't bullied per se, like we see a classic bully. They just left him out. They isolated him. He didn't feel part of the team. He didn't feel comfortable, and he named them all: Misery, Hate, Sue, and Sick. Now, I thought Sue was a girl's name, and he says, no, that person was the least bad of all of them. I just want to sue them and send them to jail. And I said, okay, well, let's look at the pictures now. It says no more with an exclamation mark. I said, what's that mean? He says, I'm not going to take it from them anymore. Them and them other kids, I've had enough. I said, now look around the bottom. I said, looks like people getting shot. What's X'd out? What's going on? He goes, yeah, they should all die for the way they treat me and other people. And then I said, okay, let's look at that person in the middle there. And you see they're laying there and they got an X in their eyes. What does an X in your eyes mean? That means you're dead. So I said, who's that person? And he said, that's me. After I kill them, I'm going to kill myself. Now that matches the trait, the suicidal ideation trait of these shooters, adults and kids, that we got to understand the statistics of these shooting events. About 50% of the time, they end with the person committing suicide. And about 50% of the time, they end when violence is applied to them by security or law enforcement. There's a very, very small percentage, like the Parkland kid who killed all those people, dropped his gun and ran outside. Very, very small percentage. These kids do not go there to kill everyone and leave. They go there to usually end their pain and take people with them. So that's an important one. You start to see things like that, you got to make comments. The one on the right, another teacher saw and sent to me, and we called the boy down and I said, you know, what is that? And he goes, oh, that's the Kool-Aid guy. You know how he comes through the wall? Oh, yeah. He goes, everybody's sick of him, man. So somebody knocked his juice out. I said, is that you with the hammer? He said, no, man, that's not me. That's a comic. That's a cartoon. But everybody's sick of that guy, so they knocked his juice out, so we can't do it. That is not first-person violence. That is a cartoon. The kid is not the kid with the hammer, and it was explainable. It was humor, right? So you got to be able to differentiate between the two when you're seeing drawings. The picture in the middle was a young man who lost his girlfriend to that fellow's picture there, and this was in the middle of his journal on what do you want to do for summer vacation. So that's a scary thing to see. We see things like that. We have to take action right away. So these are real examples. You can look for this. You can be trained to understand this and evaluate this closer. Next slide, please. All right, this is a text. We talked about, you know, social media. The kids are on social media. This was just a text message out there. You know, I got a gun. I mean, it's a Glock. It's my dad's gun. It's in the gun safe. I can go shoot her. I can do this, that, and everything. These kids will send these texts out, and the kids don't always tell us. We find out after an incident that some, if not a lot of kids knew Bobby was a problem. And why didn't you tell us? They didn't trust us to overreact because they figured we're going to drag that kid right down there and say, Bobby, are you writing a kill list? And now little Joey is involved. He doesn't want to be involved, so he doesn't say anything. The other thing is they're not, what if they're wrong? They don't want to be the one who started a big thing and they were wrong about whatever Bobby was doing. So the idea is the kids have to be able to tell us things anonymously so they maintain their self. They're not the person that was the rat or the person who started a problem. There are tip applications you can get for phones, tip apps for phones that are free. Some states have them for free. You can buy other ones, but you want to take a look at that. Geofencing puts an electronic fence around your school, your neighborhood, your community, and whenever keywords come up on social media, gun, shoot, school, kill, stuff like that, it sends a message to you and tells you whose post it was. Now you go investigate. And you want to monitor yourself. What's going on? What's the temperature of your school? What are the kids telling you that are willing to talk to you? All very important ways to see that social media is out there. Hugely important to pay attention to. Next slide, please. Okay, we talked about the clothing. So here we see some examples of some known shooters. On the left, we see the Columbine killers. Now, if you look, you'll see that they're wearing BDU pants, which are military style pants. They're wearing leather gear, web gear. They got hats on, the boots on. The reason that this happens is that when someone is preparing to attack other people, right, it's kind of like a mentality of they're going to war. And in their head, they are going to war. They're going to do something. So therefore, they dress the part. You know, clothes make the man, the old saying. Well, people will start to prepare themselves and dress that way. So the kid in the middle, Virginia Tech, he was on social media telling people what he was going to do, that he was angry. And we didn't react quickly enough to this guy. We know how he killed 33 people. But look at his clothing, BDU pants. He's got the web gear. He's got the guns, the belts. He looks very military. The guy on the right was a regular guy before he shot up downtown Dallas. And here he is dressed like he's a soldier going to war. This is how sometimes this will express itself as this anger is building. And of course, Sandy Hook, I don't have a picture of that young man. There was no camera to reveal that in the school, but he was dressed all in black with web gear, same thing. These people were going to war. So the point here is, if you see a kid who normally wears regular clothes and now all of a sudden they start to wear this kind of garb, or you start to notice a group of kids wearing this stuff, doesn't mean they're going to shoot you up, but it means there's something going on in their heads, right? If you're not a military academy, what is going on with these kids dressing like this? You need to reach out to the parents, maybe talk to your police and figure it out, figure out what's going on, okay? Clothing, very important. Next slide. So what does your school need? How do you combat all this stuff? How do you make sure you're as safe as you can be? Well, I'm going to tell you the very first thing you got to have. The first step in this whole process is to get an unbiased TVRA. It's a threat vulnerability risk assessment. That's where somebody like me comes in and looks for all your security gaps. We want to find them so you can close them, enhance your good things, and close any security gaps. And the way we do that is, my premise is, I go in saying, if I wanted to hurt you and your students, how would I do it? And then I look at your buildings and I try and find ways in. I try and find ways past your policies, your procedures, your security procedures. See if I can get into that school. When it's done, you get a roadmap to tell you to fix it. And then policies have to be up to date. You have to include best practices, and you have to train everyone, your procedures, your protocols. It helps you with liability also, which nobody wants to talk about. But the reality, if something happens in your school, there's going to be a lawsuit. So the first thing the court's going to say, what'd you know, when'd you know it, what'd you do about it when it comes to school violence? And just saying, well, we didn't have any money, so we didn't do anything. We didn't think it was going to happen to us. Just add zeros to the checks. So as administrators and business owners, you have to understand that liability is huge. You have to do something. Getting a threat assessment is the first step. And that roadmap tells you how you can budget the needs that you get in that report over a couple of years. And a student threat assessment. This is where you train a team of people in your district or in your school to recognize these signs of violence and then intervene before these kids erupt in violence and hurt people. You save your students and staff, and you can also save the lives of these students who would be violent. And it's very important to have your team trained in that, right? And we also do that. That's part of one of the things we offer. Next slide, please. All right, understanding some of these things. We're going to go through these kind of quickly here, but suicidal ideation, we want to talk about, do you have a suicide program? If you have one, take a good look at it and make sure that there's a good way for the kids to come forward, that they understand what suicide is, because kids are killing themselves more than ever. And teenagers can fall into the cluster thing where one person kills himself and another kid kills himself and another kid. We had one down here by me. It was terrible. Three boys in high school killed themselves within months of each other because of an incident that happened to them when they were a little bit younger. Right? You got to understand different levels of threat. A low threat, a medium, and a high threat tells you how you respond differently. A low threat is something that any of us might say something stupid. So a kid says in the lunchroom, you know, I'll kill you, Bob. Now, it's probably just nasty talk, saying something stupid. We don't want to hear that in school, right? But we have to learn how to identify these threats so we take the proper action. The more specific the threat is, the more action you need to take, right? So one of the ways I looked at that, I made a threat matrix here because we use them in law enforcement. It helps us to make decisions about what we should do. So you got a simple threat, I'll kill you. You ask some questions. Is there indication that the student is capable of this threat? Well, they have no history of violence in your school. You don't know that they're a hunter. You never hear them talk about that. So you say, no, not really. Then has the student taken steps to act? No indications of any planning. Like I said, no drawings, no doodlings, no writing about it. Is the threat imminent? No, it just said, I'll kill you. What do? You go to an administrator and you follow it up administratively. If that needs counseling, if it gets worse, you can include the police if that's your policy. But that gives you some guideline. The next one you see is somebody says, I'll kill Bob and Mary tomorrow for picking on me. the student does have a history of violence, and you see pictures of them on their social media with their guns, they go hunting, so you know they have weapons availability, right? Has a student taken any actions on this threat? Well, you went in their locker, in their backpack or journaling, and you found diagrams of where they want to attack Mary and Bob, right? Is it imminent? Yes. Less than 24 hours, they say they're going to do it. You call the police immediately. So you have to have these responses codified so people know exactly what they should do when they get this threat. First, they have to recognize it. To that is training. All right, so team training for threat assessments, how to get a threat assessment team to respond to these threats. That's the training you need to get for your people. Create a team, get them trained. De-escalation training is probably the next big one you should really consider. It's really important to every school to have people who are trained in the ability to de-escalate a situation. All right, I'm a hostage crisis negotiator, so I brought that skill over to the schools. It's called Crisis in the Classroom. It's a great program, teaches people how to calm people down before they erupt into actual violence. You need to do good investigations, and you need to do good drills. Your drills have to be excellent, right? Otherwise, they're just checking off a box. You want to make them of value. Next, please. Okay, safety and security is an ongoing effort. You got to include your local police. Now, as a law enforcement officer, I know in some communities, the police are not always, very close with the schools. Even in rural communities, they're just not that close sometimes. You have to take the efforts to bring them together. You have to have good planning, drills, get that threat assessment, train your people, have good policy, and then equipment. You have to look at your equipment, because having well-trained people and not the right equipment and technology is good, but it's not the whole picture. Having a lot of equipment and a lot of technology, but nobody trained is good, but it's not the whole picture. You have to put these things together. You have to make sure you get the right training, the right policy, and the right equipment so that you can lock down quickly and safely if anything happens. All right. So what I want everybody to remember is I'm going to have a couple of the people on here, my co-presenters, that are going to tell you about a couple of their things that I find very, very valuable that they offer, that you need to understand why this equipment is really good. And when we come back, a couple of minutes, we'll just be talking to them. And when we come back, my psychologist, Dr. Megan Longo, has given me a list of 7 things that everybody in our schools today needs to do going forward as we prepare to return to school.
Hi there, everybody. This is Jonathan Antar from IP Video. I want to talk briefly about a few of our products as well. First, we have the Halo IoT Smart Sensor. The Halo Smart Sensor is a vape and vape with THC detector. Now, we can differentiate between the two, which is a really key differentiator in the marketplace. This smart sensor also have the capabilities to do gunshot detection, aggression detection, and keyword detection. Now, that keyword detection can stop an assault or bullying in progress, and then sends an instant notification to your security staff to respond, allowing them to actually find out where the event is occurring and intervene. We also have our View Scan weapons detection system. Now, this system detects ferrous metals. It is radiation free, about 900 person per hour throughput, and is safe for everyone, including people with medical conditions such as pacemakers, children, or people who are pregnant. It detects ferrous metals in the body and overlays them on a camera, so you do not have to do a pat down. You can actually see right on the body where the metal is located and intervene. Joe Pangaro actually teaches classes specifically around how to operate with this particular device and screen properly. The last one I want to talk about is the AV Fusion product. This one is specifically for parent, teacher, and staff conferences, public meetings. It does on-demand documentation of interactions by actually interlacing the video and the audio together. It is a great de-escalation tool because when there's a recording in progress, people tend to act a little bit more within the bounds of where they're supposed to be. It stops people from getting aggressive, and there's actually a recording status indicator so that you know recordings are occurring in that space. It's a great tool for protecting your staff and making sure that what actually transpired in an event gets conveyed properly. Now, with that, I'd like to show a brief Halo video that goes over a little bit of the features of our Halo product.
Emergency declared, security notified. Emergency declared, security notified.
Larry, what are you doing?
Emergency declared, security notified. Emergency declared, security notified.
Thank you. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Joseph Pangaro to go over the preparation for students' return.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. Your equipment is very important. As the director of security, I can tell you, and as many of you out there know, you can be inundated with products. You want to find products that actually work in your school, that actually provide you with some value. These are some of the products that I found as the school security director, and that is one of the reasons I really wanted to do this program with these gentlemen and their products. They're great value, and they will be a great part of helping you keep your school safe. So we have some tips now from some of the psychological professionals that are dealing with schools and families. What we can do, things you need to incorporate into your programs going forward as you're getting ready. These are conversations to have with your staff, to have with your counselors, and make sure everybody's on board here. Maintaining contact with staff and students during the shutdown. What are we doing to make sure we're in contact so that these kids do not feel that sense of isolation, especially the older kids? I've seen a lot of teachers doing, the stuff with the younger kids, reading books and all that, and that's excellent. But the older kids need that connection as well. My son's in high school, and the other day, his calculus teacher got them all together on a social media platform, and they were doing their calculus, but they were also just talking about what's going on at home, how are they dealing with the stress of this. Very, very important for all of us to remember that connection to these kids so that they don't feel that isolation. The positive faculty, when you're on there being positive, was really great. I was very, very impressed with this teacher and how he was doing this. Another thing we hear is that anxiety is as contagious as the COVID. If parents are at home, are scared to death, and they are panicking and they are full of anxiety, that's gonna relate down to the kids. So trying to work the whole family into this, especially as we get ready to go back, is going to be hugely important. The CDC recommends limiting exposure to the media coverage of this pandemic for obvious reasons. All they're doing is scaring everybody to death, all right? In general, promoting developmental assets promotes school safety, and it is a possibility that some students and adults will be more reactive to things, less tolerance to stress. Now, Dr. Megan Longo, I asked her for give me your top 7 things people should know to add to their meetings and to do as we're getting ready to go back. And she says, number 1, schools need to maintain and implement their crisis plans and threat assessment procedures. Most students who pose a threat will indicate their intention in some way. That's the leakage we talked about earlier, right? Make sure your team is trained. Have a trained student threat assessment team. Number 2, all staff should be trained on identifying those risk factors, the warning signs that increase the likelihood of school violence. Right? No one factor predicts a higher risk. However, a combination may increase your risk. So know what to look for. I provide that kind of training, webinar and live. It's important for your staff to get that. Number 3, students should have an overview on identifying a peer who may be at risk for violence or self-harm, and they should understand how they can tell you that. This is the tip apps, the tip lines. How do these kids know when they know Bobby's making a kill list and they want to get that information to you, or students thinking of hurting themselves? How do they get that information to you? You need training for the students. Make sure they know that. Number 4, parents should have training so that they recognize the signs that they should be looking for, that maybe something is brewing. How many times do we see these activities where the kid goes into school and shoots up the building, and the parents were really in the dark about the whole thing? They had no idea that the kid was planning such a thing. So they need to be aware also. Number 5, schools need to continue to foster a positive school climate and social emotional learning to increase connectedness and reduce the feelings of isolation. One of the number 1 things we see with these shooters in the workplace for adults or for kids is they feel isolated from everybody else. They do not feel a part of it. So make sure you come up with things that make those kids feel connected. Really, that's hugely important. Let's see, number 6, schools need to share resources to students, families, how to address stress, include the faculty. So maybe in this, as we get closer to going back, You do a Thursday night group meeting, like, and we can get 1,000 people on this webinar. You could do that with your school and get the parents on there and the kids and talk about the positive things about coming back and how everybody's getting ready. Make it exciting, make it fun. Let them see that the veil is lifting, so it's not so ominous, that we're getting through this together. That's important, to be positive and uplifting. And number 7, schools should provide resources for students, staff, and families who they can connect to if they need to. So how do the kids call you? How do the parents call you? Do they know how to do that? Is there a parents meeting you could put together? Is there a special email or whatever? I know a lot of schools are doing it, but if you're not, consider how you can reach out to those parents and they can reach out to you to tell you, I have a concern before my child goes back to school that they could be having stress issues or problems or whatever. So these are important points to keep in mind, and we're going to have a mechanism for you to email to us, and we will send you all these lists and some other paperwork that I've put together to help keep all this in a form that you can look back at it and remember all of it. Can we go to the next slide? All right, so our conclusion here. And once again, I want to thank John and John for being here. You guys have been great with this whole thing. Your commitment to making people safe is tremendous, as is mine. This is what I've dedicated my life to. So I want to thank both of you. Your schools, get a TVRA, get a threat assessment, understand where your weaknesses are, and then get a plan to remediate them. Local police do them. The problem with them, as I used to do them, is that we don't always have the time to do a very thorough one. So I do threat assessments. I come out, I travel around the country. I do threat assessments of all your buildings and write up everything and make sure you understand and help you tighten up. Get a student threat assessment team together. All right, we offer that training because assessments are one of the most important things to understand where you have problems so you can tighten them up. And then get the training for your staff, de-escalation or whatever else is out there that we're offering. So we can go to the next slide. So some of the things that I am offering are obviously the threat assessments I talked about. I also offer anti-vaping training. Now, we haven't talked a lot about vaping when the schools have been closed, but remember the commotion that we were going through just before the world shut down here? Vaping was becoming such a huge problem. These kids are vaping, they're getting lung disease, they're dying now. They're vaping not only with THC, but they're also vaping with the heroin and other products. These things catch fire, they explode, very dangerous. So I offer vaping programs for parents, for students, and for your staff to figure out how to do that, how to do the investigation, how to respond to it properly. I offer a school training and commercial training. So this is for business people also. Active shooters don't just limit themselves to school buildings. This is a danger for everybody wherever people gather. And we do weapons detection and loss prevention screening. That's using a piece of equipment like that view scan, which is excellent. What do you do when that detector goes off? Your staff has to be trained properly to keep moving people through, but ask the right questions and make sure they do a good investigation so a weapon doesn't slide through on you. All right, all of mine, you can reach out at ipvideocorp.com/TSD, and you can reach me that way. For our webinar promotion, to thank everybody for coming here to spend the time with us, is that we're offering a full hour training webinar for any one of the topics that we offer for only $199. So you can put as many as 1,000 people of your staff on that training to cover any one of these topics that we have here. So I really want to thank you for coming out. Next slide. So our contacts are here. We don't mind phone calls. We don't mind emails. Reach out with a question. It's better to ask your question and get an answer than to not be sure. We're here to help. All right. And we have some questions and answers. So I know that people have been sending stuff in. So we have Danielle from the office here. Danielle, do you have a couple of questions that people were sending in?
Danielle, we can't hear you, so just unmute yourself and let us know those questions.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I apologize. I was saying thank you. We've also had some really positive feedback coming in with people saying this is outstanding information and their districts out in South Dakota need some of these resources as well. So I also just want to say that for any questions that we're not able to address live today, our teams will follow up with you direct. So Joe, first question for you is, we had a local police department do an assessment of our school a few years ago. They told us to keep doors locked, get cameras, and practice drills. What else should an assessment provide?
All right, well, that's a great question. That goes to what I was saying about if your local police can do it for you and that's all you can afford, then you should get that, because an assessment is better than not an assessment. But when I did them as a police officer, we don't always have the time to spend the full time. So a full assessment should look at everything, should interview staff, students, look at your doors, your windows, your cameras, your technology, your policies, procedures, what you do at football games, what you do at afternoon sports. What do you do before the day starts? What happens after the day starts and on the weekend? It should be thorough and comprehensive, and nothing should be missed, because at any moment there could be a tragedy and you don't want to find that you were caught short because you didn't look at everything. So that's where, I'm happy to come out and do it. I've done it for schools all over the place, and they are extremely valuable.
What is de-escalation training, and how is it used to keep students safe?
Okay. Well, like I was saying in the program, I'm a trained FBI hostage crisis negotiator. So I took some of those skills when I went to the schools as a director of security, and I saw that a lot parents have a tendency to get upset on occasion and sometimes threaten violence. Kids will get out of control, start yelling and screaming, and I've seen staff members have problems also that result in potential violence, where people are losing their control, they're starting to get loud, there could be threatening things. De-escalation training teaches everyone in your district, because anybody could come across one of these people. All right, so it's the custodian all the way up to the superintendent should be trained. So I put together a program that we can do as a webinar or live, where basically I teach you the principles of understanding how to recognize someone in crisis, and then how to talk to them, what to say, and really importantly, what not to say when someone is in crisis, so that you can de-escalate that anger. It's kind of like a big balloon. You don't want the balloon to pop. You want the balloon to de-escalate, to deflate, so that you can control the situation. So de-escalation training is probably one of the most important things every school district employee should have. And everywhere I go and do this program, the individual teachers and employees are so thrilled to get this training that's one of the things that I really love doing because of that factor. So de-escalation training, huge tool for schools and businesses. It happens anywhere somebody can get upset.
That's great. Thank you. John, thank you. And I'm going to just ask one final question for the sake of time, and I think it really kind of helps round out this webinar. So Joe, this one is for you. Isn't it true that active shooters are kids who are bullied? In our school district, we have a very good anti-bullying program. Do you think that makes us safe enough?
Okay. One of the myths of the active shooter or the shooter in the workplace is that they are bullied. Sometimes the kids that do the shooting are victims of bullying and they're striking back out. But because of the isolation component and not feeling connected, sometimes it's the bully. The same thing that causes them to be a bully and pick on people, weaker people, or people they think they can get over on, is the same thing when these angers and these problems or these mental conditions build up, that they now strike out and attack people. And we see a lot of these shooters were not only bullied, they could have been the bully. So it's very important. If you have a great program on bullying, that is so important for the day-to-day life of these kids, to make sure they have a good experience in school. You want to make sure there is no bullying, and it's fantastic, but you got to go beyond that. It's not just bullying. That's a myth that the kid is bullied. And if we just deal with those kids who are getting picked on, these shooters can come from anywhere. And my concern here with the return after COVID-19, they could come at us from many different directions we haven't seen coming before. So it's important to understand who they are, what are the traits, what should we be looking for to make sure we're safe and secure.
And that is all we have for our Q&A.
All right. Well, I would like to take another minute again to thank all of you that are hanging in here with us for this whole program. Remember, what you're doing is so important. There's a saying that I like to throw out there because it came to me dealing with these parents. I've written articles with Michelle Gay, who lost her daughter in Sandy Hook, and with other people out there who've been victims, and it's horrifying and the pain is terrible. So my comment is this: no child should ever be afraid to go to school, and no parent should ever fear that their child won't return home. That is our responsibility, yours and mine. And I thank all of you for attending this program. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. We're here to help. We're all in this together, ladies and gentlemen. COVID's coming to an end sooner or later, and we have to all be ready to prevent violence. Thank you.